Hello and welcome to episode 94 of PauseCast. It is Thursday, the 11th of October, 2018. I am Jessica Alouette, and I use she, her pronouns.
And I'm Mark Henna, I use he, him. Welcome.
Hey, it's been a little blah.
It has been a little blah.
Yeah, the state of the industry has been a little blah while we've been away, huh?
Yeah, some shit happened.
Some shit happened. Let's address this a little bit right out of the gate. Telltale and Capcom Vancouver, two studios containing a couple hundred employees each, shut down over the past few weeks since we have recorded. In Capcom's case, there was, it was no warning, but severance pay was still issued and all this. And in Telltale's case, there was no severance pay or anything like that. Like, just two studios up and disappearing. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And we're actually going to do a whole episode on labor issues in the game industry, and that's going to be coming soon. Within the next few weeks, hopefully. We're going to have an in-depth discussion on this sort of thing, because we've talked about it on the show in the past.
Yeah, there have been some things that happened, but this is bigger and worser.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons, especially the stuff around the Telltale closure. There's a lot of layers. The industry, in terms of labor, is in a bad place, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth. For now, though, Mark, it's been a while. Do you want to tell me what you have played in this period that we've had off?
Actually played a bunch of games.
Which is weird, because normally you play one.
Pretty much, yeah. If I just list them, I suppose, I might even miss some. There's been heaps. I've played some more Frostpunk. I returned to Middle-earth: Shadow of War. I've bought and played a couple of new games, Time Spinner and Crosscode. I've played Assassin's Creed Origins, which I've been borrowing from my brother. I played the new Absolver DLC. So, yeah, I've played a bunch of stuff since we last recorded.
Shoot, yeah. And I, for myself, have played Destiny 2. I have played Dirt 4 and Project Cars 2. I have played Yakuza Kiwami, and I have played Ghost Recon Wildlands.
Hang on. Did I win this time?
Did you? You might have won in terms of just, like, raw games played, for
that
sure.
Would honestly be a first. Let me think.
It would be. I've put a lot of focus into a lot of different games, as usual. But, like, I don't know. Recently, it's been a little bit more consistent across genre.
I've played one more game than you, it seems. Unless you just haven't mentioned one that you played. Like, if you've played any Overwatch since we last recorded, then, okay, I didn't beat you.
I don't even think I have.
Okay. Maybe I still did win.
Shoot. Oh, you know what? No, I played Hearthstone.
Okay, there we go. So we're
I did
tied
actually try
at
Hearthstone.
Best. We're tied at best. Still,
yeah.
It's a lot closer than usual.
It is.
I still couldn't pull it off.
I mean, like, you're not trying to beat me at this, and neither am I. Like, I'm not trying to beat you either. This isn't competition. But it's interesting to see the array of things that we've played. And it's been interesting to, like, focus more on games for me. Like, I'm pulling a U.
yeah. Whereas I bought 2 new games and I've borrowed one that I hadn't played before. So some new stuff always, I can spread it around a little bit more.
Exactly. All right. Well, without further ado, do you want to get into talking about your first game?
Yeah. So the first one I played was Frostpunk. I'd actually mentioned, I think last time we recorded, I played a little bit of it. If I remember correctly, I picked it up while it was on sale a few weeks ago. And I'd seen it before, and I knew I liked the art style. This whole radial coordinate system thing just really appealed to me. but I also knew that it was supposed to be challenging. I wasn't sure how that was going to be for me. So what I've ended up doing is playing on easy difficulty. So I don't know how that compares with the quote true unquote experience of Frostpunk. You know, the challenges being as difficult as they're meant to be. I really like the art style. The radial thing is just not something I've seen in other games, and it's really nice. The way everything locks into place works with that radial coordinate system as well. So, you know, you're going around the circle and in and out of it instead of just like an X and Y axis.
Mm.
And it was just really nice to have something different. It's interesting how they match buildings up. Sometimes the space available, if it's like almost fit, but they don't want like have a tiny sliver left over and stuff. But yeah, so that's been interesting. Even on easy difficulty, the challenges are pretty daunting. I have played up to what I assume is the final challenge of the first scenario. I don't remember what it's called. For those of you who've played it before, basically, I've gotten up to the bit where the storm is coming. One thing I've definitely noticed about this game is it doesn't really prepare you that well for the challenges you're going to face. Like, the tutorial explains, okay, you need to make a building that'll let you get some food, and you need to gather coal. But what it doesn't tell you is, oh, also, build tents for people to live in so they're not living outside. So my first 20-minute playthrough, I ended up with everyone being like, hey, why are we still sleeping on the floor outside? This is horrible. We hate you. And I was like, oh, well, okay. The tutorial didn't tell me to build houses, so I didn't do it. So that's when I restarted on easy. I built some houses first, and that went way better. I ended up playing it pretty much a solid day. I'm pretty sure I dreamt about Frostpunk that night, but I stopped when I got up to... So the late challenge in that campaign is there is a really bad storm coming. And when it's almost there and you research the special technology to tell how long it's going to last, the game tells you, okay, you'd better have stockpiled 2 weeks of food for everyone, otherwise they're going to starve. And I'm like, oh, I have not been stockpiling food at all because I haven't needed to until now, so that's good to know. I've got, 3 days? So I haven't gone back to it. I don't know if I'd be able to manage that or not. Maybe I would. I don't know. But it's just... It's been kind of annoying that the game doesn't really prompt you to, hey, it's a good idea to stockpile food, sort of thing.
Is Frostpunk a real-time strategy game?
It's... So you can pause it. It's a city building game with narrative challenges.
Gotcha.
I wouldn't call it real-time strategy. You don't control people specifically. What you do is you'll have a building, which might be a resource gathering thing, and you'll say, okay, I want 5 workers to work here. And then the game figures out who does that and when,
Right.
and stuff like that. And it's got a very sort of steampunk Victorian feel to it. Once you hit kind of the halfway point in the first campaign scenario, and I don't know if this is different in other scenarios, you make a choice between... I assume the other path is like, okay, you're using religion to control people, and otherwise you're like, okay, you're controlling people through order, and it's very like, oh, build a prison. It's like, oh, I didn't want to choose this path then. But being on easy, I didn't have to make a whole lot of hard calls, so I managed to just be like, okay, I'll do the minimum to keep, what is it? There's a couple of things. There's a hope meter, and a discontent meter. Obviously you want hope high and discontent low. And I managed to do those without really having to make any morally questionable choices. Which is, it's not what the game's about. The game's about forcing you to make hard choices, but I don't know. I'm probably not exactly the sort of player they're aimed at. I think City Skylines is definitely more my speed. I just wanted to play this because I knew it was different and I liked how it looked. So that's been interesting. Like I said, I stopped when I got to that storm, but I was like, oh, I guess I should have been stockpiling food. And I haven't gone back to see if I can manage it. I guess I could. I don't know if I will or not. I feel like I might have got out of that game what I was wanting to get out of it already, and if I want a city builder again, I probably will return to City Skylines. Although I did look at going back to it after playing Frostpunk, and I was just really annoyed that they've got so many DLC that I feel like should be a few dollars, but it's like $25. Like for the day-night cycles, I think it was like $20.
Mm.
which seems
I think
bizarre.
the model that City Skylines has is also like there is more systemic stuff that's added in each of those DLCs. Like
Mm.
the day night cycle also adds like new transport systems and a
Sure,
whole bunch
sure.
of things like that. I think that ultimately kind of makes that expansion model work, but they are totally like they're really really expensive. And
Yeah.
when you look at them on the scale of like a city, you think, oh, like one or two mechanical systems. That's not such a huge addition. It may be a transformative experience when you actually start using it, but like you look at the scale kind of without any context and you think, oh, this isn't really all that big.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like you'd have to get 4 or 5 of these for them to be worth the price they're selling one for if it would make that big of an impact on the game. But again, maybe
Mm.
I'm not quite their target audience for that DLC. Anyone who listens knows that I try to avoid spending much money on games. Um, but yeah, that's been my experience with Frostpunk. Really, I definitely had dreams about like a horrible ice storm that next night, which was interesting. There weren't awful
Oof.
nightmares or anything. It was fine, but I had just played that much of it through the day. Whereas I don't know if I'd expected to have like a solid several hours session with that game.
Yeah.
But like I did enjoy it on easy. Um,
See, the reason I asked earlier about
mhm.
if it's like a real time strategy
Right.
is Civilization is
Oh yeah.
a turn based strategy game
Right.
that kind of I feel like it might kind of hit on some of the same stuff. Um, not in terms of like disaster systems, but in terms of like, oh, you need to have this many resources to, sustain your cities and grow your population. It's more of an abstracted series of problems, I guess, than it is the more present stuff that is in Frostpunk. But
Frostpunk definitely has like RTS systems in that it has like resources
mhm,
and a tech tree and stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot in it that's more reminiscent of a real-time strategy game than of a city builder, I think. Um, there's definitely no turn-based stuff in it, although it gets maybe a little close in one of its systems where you send scouts out to a distant place and it
mm,
takes a few days often for them to get there, and then something happens and then you decide to bring them back or send them somewhere else. But that's like an added layer on top of the general stuff.
right,
It's
yeah.
also broken into the street night and day. People work during the day; they don't work at night. So you kind of have to plan for that a bit, which is interesting. Later in the game, you can get automatons which will work all day and all night, and uh, I found it was quite nice to be able to get them to also do research through the night, so that I could like double my research speed and just get the automatons to make themselves better as well as everything else. I feel like if you
Right,
don't
yeah.
do that, it's probably quite hard to get a lot of the high level research before that like end game challenge pops up. I haven't tried a second run to see how it'd be avoiding that. Um, and of course, I was playing it easy, so it's much easier to do that than normal. But yeah,
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. The other thing that I was thinking of around I've thought about this around Civ specifically,
mm-hmm.
um, is that I can never really seem to get my focus in strategy games. Like you think about Civ, right? You think about, oh, there's so many ways that you can win a game of Civ. Like there's the military victories and culture victories and science victories and faith victories. There's all these different possible victory conditions, and the thing I end up doing in all strategy games, it seems, and this extends out to like Stellaris and all this stuff, is I can never find my focus on the one type of thing that I want to do because I always want to like have this balance where games in this genre don't seem to be suited towards you actually having a balance, and it wants you to make a sacrifice of one thing or the other in order to achieve whatever desired victory you have.
I think Frostpunk doesn't have that problem.
I don't think it does either because it's focused on survival.
Exactly. There's no enemy. It's just don't let the environment kill you.
Exactly. That's something else I was thinking about when it came
Mm.
to this game. but it's still interesting to also think about it in the context of like strategy games in general. And here in Frostpunk, this seems like a kind of strategy game that might be suited more towards me because it has a singular focus, which is to survive. There's resources and stuff surrounding that, but there is a singular focus and a singular objective.
I liked the predictability of some of the environmental challenges. One thing that keeps me from playing real time strategy games is just I don't like being attacked by the enemies. In Frostpunk, you have a sort of a time meter at the top, and it'll tell you, in 2 days the temperature is going to drop 2 levels. So you can think about what that means and how to prepare for it, and you can see, and then a day later it's going to go back up 1 level. So okay, so the real problem isn't going to last too long, but it's not going to get back to this level again. And so there's predictability, you can prepare for it, and it's going to just stay that bad, and it's not like, oh, well, I don't know if I've got the right people to kill these people who come to attack me or whatever. It's way more predictable. It's, okay, I need to have enough coal stockpiled so the heat can be higher for these days. I need to put these little heaters around the city in the places they need to be, that sort of thing. I preferred that predictability, definitely. And I'm sure, again, if I weren't playing on easy, with predictability, you can make challenges a bit harder to sort of compensate for that. I don't know if they've done that. I don't know how the normal difficulty of Frostpunk compares to the normal difficulty of a real-time strategy game. But I liked the way I didn't have to worry about being attacked by randos, even if they were AI randos. Although I did get some people killed by polar bears. That was a scouts thing, though.
All right. Yep. Death by polar bear works for me. Shall I talk about some AI baddies of my own that I've been fighting against?
Let's go.
All right. I have been playing Destiny 2, like I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And more specifically, I've been playing around with probably my favorite addition to the expansion, which is a mode called Gambit. Have you heard much about this mode?
I feel like I have, but I don't remember a damn thing.
Okay, I'm going to briefly explain Gambit.
Okay.
Because it's kind of an interesting concept.
Mm-hmm.
It is a competitive PvE, player versus environment, which means you're fighting against AI. And
I always
PvP.
think PvE is player versus enemies. I know that like the official or whatever one is environment, but I always think of it as
I actually had this discussion with someone else recently too. And I think the environment distinction is important because that also allows for the inclusion of things like jumping puzzles and environmental hazards, in addition to, all the enemy hazards that are populating the area.
It's fair.
I think it ultimately makes a kind of useful distinction. But it's a hybrid between, fighting those AI enemies and fighting against actual people. The goal of Gambit is to fill your bank with enough motes, which are little bits. They're little trinkets that enemies drop when they're killed.
Okay.
So you're going to kill enemies, collect the little bits they drop, and bring them back into an area in the center that's called the bank. And you're going to try and store enough motes to summon the final boss.
That sounds exactly like real life.
First team to kill the final boss wins the round. Best of 3.
So, when you summon the final boss, can other people just kill it then?
Yep, you can start killing it then. Summons with a couple of other enemies so that when they're killed, they'll make it easier to kill. The final boss is very hard to kill otherwise.
Hang on.
It takes a long time.
Why do you need to care about being the one to summon the final boss if other people can just kill it when you summon it?
Because you are in separate areas. The teams are in separate areas, rather.
Oh, so they would have to go and find you if you summon it, sort of.
They will have to actually kill their own final boss.
Oh, okay, you're in separate instances. Sorry.
Basically,
I misunderstood your answer.
At times, though, you can send a player through to the other team's side to invade.
Oh, yes, I remember being told about this.
If you are if you get kills on their side, any of the motes, those little trinkets, that the player has when they're killed are lost. You can't recollect them.
Okay. But neither can they.
Neither can they. But it means that you could like deny a lot of progress. And if the final boss is spawned and someone invades, any kills that they get will heal the final boss.
So you can slow them down. So
you can slow them down. You can come back from even like a potentially like huge gap if you send over just the right person.
So presumably you're playing as a team?
Yes.
How big are the teams?
4 versus 4.
Okay.
So fairly small teams all up, and that means that like everybody is really, really important to this. And it's really this is coming back to Overwatch almost, in that it's kind of frustrating to play if you're like me and are a solo player who doesn't have a lot of like local friends who I can actually jump into the game with.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of this annoying experience when I'm playing the objective, but everybody else seems to be kind of doing their own thing. Everybody's got like some bounty or objective of their own that they're pursuing, and they aren't actually working together as a team. And Destiny's matchmaking makes this all the more frustrating because it has this nasty tendency to just match solo players against full teams.
How would it be able to tell?
I'm confused by the question here.
How? I'm not sure how to word it differently because I don't understand the environment that much. What's the difference between a solo player from the game's perspective and a full team? Does that make
a full team, as in they have preformed the team before going in?
Oh, so you mean like there are 4 people on one side and it just puts one person on the other side and you're still waiting?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So you're putting groups of 4, individual people together, but then you're putting them against a team that came in fully formed.
Oh, so they like formed a group out before matchmaking and then came in together.
Yep.
Oh, okay, now I understand. Right.
So the Destiny has this nasty tendency to do that, and it's kind of bothersome. It's just really, really poor and makes for a frustrating experience. So I've actually started I got really frustrated at one point and started actually trying to do something productive about it and turn it into like, hey, here are like all these tips and tricks that you can use as a solo player to, play to the objective, help your teammates, and understand, when you should be invading, when you should be doing all of these individual parts of the game, because it seems like the understanding of that among solo players, people who aren't like regularly playing the mode as a team, it seems like the understanding of that is maybe a bit lower, where like people who are playing it as a team even semi-regularly, there's this grasp on the mechanics that they have, and there's this cohesion as well, because they are probably in constant communication with each other and can make just a quick call out of her voice like, okay, the enemies have started spawning over here, or watch out for the invader, they're over here.
And just learning from their own, like, their shared experience instead of only their own as well.
Exactly.
So is this advice you've been giving to people you've been playing with, or what forms this in?
It's going to be something, yeah. Like, I'll be honest, I haven't been in the kind of mindset to be giving people advice live as we play.
Fair.
Also because I'm, trying to focus on playing the objective as best as I can.
Yep.
And it means I'm pretty consistently at the top of the team leaderboards. Yeah, it's just been kind of a wildly frustrating experience that I'm hoping to try and turn into some good.
Fair enough.
Let's see. All right. Do you want to get on to talking about Shadow of War? Because I'm curious why you went back. Because you finished that game, haven't you?
Well, not really. I thought I was done with it. I hadn't finished it. I had known, because a bunch of people have written about it, they had like a post-story continuing mode, but I hadn't gotten up to that. And I don't really know why I went back. I think it just had an itch or something. Or I just wanted to see what was next there, and yeah, on a whim, I went back to it. And rather than just what I had mostly been doing, which was just fucking around killing orcs, I was like, okay, I'm gonna finish gathering the collectibles, which by that point I had all the remaining ones on the map, and finish all the story quests so that I could get to that post story ongoing section.
Yeah.
And I've done that now, and I know that there's an end-ish to the post-story ongoing stuff, but I haven't even started that. I just got up to that, and I was happy with that. Now, if I go back, I will just be fucking around killing orcs again, I think. And I'm kind of really annoyed. The whole game, I had been avoiding a lot of the wraith skills because I just didn't really like them. They didn't feel like they were the character's abilities, like they didn't fit, and I just didn't spend the points in them. And so I had all these skill points, and there was this constant prompt on the screen: spend your skill points on something. So I just went and like filled out the skills that I didn't feel like I'd use. Like every skill has got a few alternate things you can select, kind of like the runes in Diablo 3, so you can modify each skill in one of several ways, and each way costs skill points to unlock. And I just unlocked some of those that I didn't think I was going to use so that the prompt would go away. And then after I finished the main story, you unlock some more skills that you can just keep dumping points into that increase your stats. And I am so annoyed that I didn't know it was worth saving them for something I'd actually use. Thankfully, after the story, because of spoiler reasons, the Wraith skills now make sense and I actually like using them. So some of the stuff I unlocked, I don't feel too bad about. But it was annoying to have those like prestige skills just come kind of unexpectedly out of the blue at the end of the main story, especially since there was this constant prompt on the screen to spend all your skill points. That just always seemed dumb and annoying to me. But it's just there's no foreshadowing at all. I didn't not expect those to pop up, so yeah, I'm bitter about that. I'd also forgotten how easy it is to sort of lose yourself in the gear system, just because you get a lot of junk, and if you haven't cleared it out, like I hadn't, and you come back to the game, it's like, oh, was I saving this for a reason? And I just ended up destroying everything that wasn't legendary or what I already had equipped. Thankfully, once you've got something that has like a special skill that you like, you can just upgrade it to your level, which is nice, so you don't need to worry about leaving behind. Like I've got one that sometimes when I get hit, it increases my might meter to full, which means I can do a bunch of special moves, and I find that super useful. So I've just kept upgrading it to my level every few levels instead of ditching it and finding something worse, but that lets me survive. But yeah, every time you kill a captain or find a place where one's been killed where you didn't collect the gear for whatever, there's some rubbish there for you to collect and probably immediately scrap. Which is, yeah, if you don't clear it out regularly, it's easy to get lost in. And clearing out your scrap isn't that much fun. So, I don't know, the gear system was underwhelming to return to, I guess. I also remembered that there was some DLC for it. I know that there was a couple of story expansions which I have told myself I wouldn't get because I didn't like how the first game handled its story expansions. Just being like a separate mode where it gave you a certain set of skills regardless of how you'd progress in single player and stuff. I just wasn't really into that. But I knew they also had a couple of content expansions that just added like new varieties of orcs and stuff, and I thought, oh, maybe they'd be pretty affordable if they were like $5 to $10 each or something. But they're not. They're $25 each, so screw that. It's the same bloody story as City of Skylines. DLC that I thought would be inexpensive is not inexpensive at all, so I've continued to do my thing and I've not purchased that. I also so I know it's your favorite game, you'll just hate me dissing it, but there's something I found that it really bugged me.
I'm holding my tongue. Continue.
When you do a fortress takeover, at the very end, you go into a room where you're on your own fighting the boss of the fort and all of his minions. And the fight's just badly designed. Like, putting you in this room is just taking away most of your options. No stealth. Your minions aren't with you, the ones that you just came in attacked with. And I never really understood why you don't just get them to follow you through the door. There's no environmental stuff. There are some traps there, but they're kind of meant for you. Obviously you can't run away, but I mean that's kind of fine in a boss fight. But I had one particular pain in the ass to fight. They were immune to executions, which is the main way of dealing damage to orcs in combat. They countered all attacks from the front. One of their epic abilities was they've got lots and lots of health. Another ability they had was he can heal himself. And if you fight an orc for long enough and you keep using the same moves against it, they will adapt to become immune to them. So they became immune to frost. They became immune to when I countered them to knock them on the ground and then stabbed them on the ground. They're immune to ground stabs. They're immune to being jumped over. So eventually, pretty much all I felt I could do to hurt them was countering them. Which, when they've got a lot of health anyway, and sometimes can regenerate it if you don't keep attacking them, which I can't do until they attack me, it was really slow. I didn't actually beat them until I realized you can magically summon beasts even though you're in that room. So I had to summon a giant troll thing to bash this orc into submission with. But yeah, that fight just seemed so badly designed. Because if I encountered this orc not in a room I was stuck in, I would have been able to take a completely different approach to it.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, when they generate the orcs, it's interesting, but they just put you in an environment that limits all your options. But the whole point of these orcs is you're supposed to know their weaknesses so you can go a particular route, but then, also you can't. It just felt poorly thought out.
See, the thing that is, like, the pitfall of any procedural generation in any game is there are limits, and, you could procedurally generate any number of annoying situations. I mean, let's take a look at another controversy that's actually happened in the past little while, even.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember Total War Rome 2 by any chance?
It's not a game I've played. I haven't really done much with the Total War series, so I don't remember specifically anything about that instance in the franchise.
There was some controversy around Total War Rome 2 recently because, and this is going to come as a shock, the reason for the controversy. It's because some players seem to be reporting, a high amount of women generals in certain civilizations and situations.
Oh no!
Yeah. Oh no! How terrible! This, of course, is seen as the reason this was controversial was it was seen as an affront to historical accuracy, to which. Total War, the developers responded that Total War is not about historical accuracy, but rather historical authenticity. They were using authentic statistics about, the amount of women generals.
Hang on, what's the difference here between accuracy and authenticity?
The way that they see accuracy and authenticity is they're using authentic stats to the period.
Isn't that the same as accurate stats?
20%, you had a 20% chance of getting a woman general, but you could roll that 20% chance many, many times.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's still using an authentic stat and an accurate stat, but it doesn't necessarily generate a historically accurate result.
Oh, sure. I mean, that's what randomness does.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm getting at here as well. Like it's a similar sort of situation where like the systems are all in place and they just kind of go, and they can create these really, really annoying scenarios for any number of reasons. That you could find them annoying.
I think
it's just the nature of randomness.
I think in this case, it wasn't the randomness so much as the fact that they had also put you in a room where you didn't have a lot of your options. I think if they hadn't done that, if they had a more... Like, if you were fighting the boss in the fortress, not just this room, like a lot of the other sort of boss fights happen, even if you were somehow forced to be on your own, it'd be far more interesting because you've got the options you normally have. I understand they were trying to make it more challenging, but I think they just did it in an uninteresting way. Also, that's such a bullshit bad gamer culture thing to be annoyed that, oh no, 1 in 5 people in this game is a woman. What is the world coming to?
Well, yeah, again, though, like, you could generate a much higher...
Yeah, but, like, fuck off.
I know. It's absolutely one of those, like, fuck off situations.
Yeah.
It's such a ridiculous, absurd thing to be mad about. But it sure was a thing. In Total War, they had to come out and say, like, oh, this controversy has been, like, manufactured, essentially. Like, we've not changed any of this in quite some time. We've changed some stuff around, like how women get added into the family trees, because that's a new thing that we've added to the game recently, but we haven't actually changed these numbers. It's all bullshit. It was fucking unbelievable that it was controversial. Oh, the WOMs are invading our games. God help us all.
It's actually this gender ratio in a game is interesting in the context of Shadow of War. Tolkien as an author is one of his things seemed to have been like, oh, if 2 women's enough, I guess. There are, I think, like 3 named female characters in Lord of the Rings or something ridiculously low like that.
But one of those women says, I am no man, and, kills Sauron or something. So
the
that
Witch King.
definitely...
Yeah, no, like, that's a cool moment, but generally it's not his strength. And
definitely negates all of the other shit.
Oh, yeah, it negates it entirely.
Totally, because there's one strong woman.
It's been interesting how the team that's done the narrative of Shadow of War seems to have done quite well at introducing more main story characters who are women. But all the orcs, who are like 99% of all the characters you interact with in the game, they're still all dudes. It would have been interesting if they'd not gone with that, I guess. I don't know. I have to wonder about how orcish culture works that way. Like, are there a whole bunch of orcish women off somewhere else? Can I just not tell the difference? I don't know.
Weren't the orcs... No, it was the Uruks. I'm sorry.
Who were like grown.
Which are... Yeah, they're all like manufactured.
Yeah, I mean, the game doesn't get into it at all. I just couldn't help but wonder, like, how does it work?
I don't think
What's
the
up?
films
Are you just all
showed
dudes?
this either. They showed the manufacture of the orcs, which, like, I think leads into, like, oh, how are, like, why are there no orc women?
I mean, I'm not a huge
To a
Tolkien
point.
buff, but what I understand is that orcs are like the ancestors of magically tortured elves. Sorry, the descendants. But I mean, some of the elves are women. I think there was one in the books.
I don't know.
Maybe
I am
that's the
also
problem.
not a Tolkien
No.
buff as...
You just made me think of it when you were talking about that Total War Rome 2 thing. And it was like, it's something I noticed playing the game. It's like, hey, I mean, like, yeah, some of the characters who you interact with who you don't kill, yep. But I mean, every single enemy. It's interesting.
Yeah. Alright, shall we talk about a different game?
Wait, there are different games?
There are other video games?
Have you
Shall we
played
talk
them?
about... Yeah, shall I talk about Dirt 4 and Project Cars 2?
Dirt is not a video game, it's just outside what
Yeah,
the ground
Dirt
is
is
made
just
of.
outside, sorry. It's the sequel to Dirt.
How did they make 3 sequels to Dirt?
New composites? They just, put different elements together and
I
make
mean,
Dirt a little
I can
differently?
understand that Sand was Dirt too. they're like clay, maybe mud.
Sedimentary layers.
Anyway, Yeah, tell me about Dirt 4.
I will tell you about Dirt 4 and Project Cars 2.
Okay.
I'm putting both of them together because they share enough of the DNA and like ideas between them that I'm going to take kind of a look at them in tandem,
Okay.
as well as pick apart some stuff in Project Cars 2 a little bit specifically.
Okay.
Both these games are simulation focused racing games.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, it's kind of very much my wheelhouse. I love cars, as it turns out.
Yeah, you've been getting more and more into racing games, eh?
Yep. I have been.
It's good. It's kind of nice watching you find this genre that you just really like and exploring it, I guess.
I mean, like, it's always been a genre that's really clicked with me. Like, you think back and, I've talked extensively about how much I love Forza Horizon.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I was including that in this thing I feel like I've been
Right.
watching while recording the shows with you. Is gradually been
in
playing
the
more and
past,
more.
like, you also have the Need for Speed lineage that I played extensively. Like, racing games have never really left my interest.
Mm-hmm.
They've been out of focus for a little bit, for sure.
Okay.
But they've never really left my kind of sphere of interest. I've always kind of watched from the side. And in more recent years, I've started to experiment more with taking racing games very seriously, which is why games like Project Cars 2 and stuff have found their way into my library. The idea of like taking this a lot more seriously and having a more realistic, grounded experience than something like Need for Speed, which Ash loves tremendously.
Yeah, I played a bunch of the Need for Speed games, and the arcadey racing games I can get much more easily into than the simulation-y ones. I find them a little daunting, to be honest.
They totally are, but I've really loved learning the like ins and outs of how they work, and I think now, like, even if you were to throw me back into a Need for Speed environment, I would still take some of the lessons I learned in playing Forza and playing Project Cars and playing Dirt. I would take some of the lessons I've learned there and play those games at an even higher level than I already was.
Have you ever considered... There was I can't remember what it's called. There was a simulation, not a racing game, but a vehicle game that was all about, like, rescuing other cars from the mud that came out a whole while ago.
Spin tires?
Yeah, have you ever considered trying something like that?
No, I don't think that's really my speed.
Okay.
I think my speed is more speed.
Well said.
Yeah. So the things I'm going to talk about specifically here: Dirt 4, Project Cars 2, simulation heavy games.
Mm-hmm.
Dirt 4 has more of a rally focus, where Project Cars 2 is focused very much on a more traditional motorsport, I guess.
So rally basically means they're driving on dirt?
Yeah, point to point as well. Fastest time from point A to point B.
Okay.
Where Project Cars 2, you'll see a lot of like circuit racing. You can start out racing in cars. Karts, for example.
I remember you telling me about that, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. So I've put a lot of time into those games, and I like some of the personal touches in Dirt 4 specifically.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole quote unquote branding suite that you can go into, and you can choose, sponsors for your vehicles, and they will get added to the overall look of your car, and they'll provide you with certain objectives as you do each event. You can also customize colors and stuff, so you can create a car that is very uniquely you.
That's cool.
It's nice. Yeah.
That's something I always loved about the Need for Speed games. Once it was introduced, was just customizing your car.
This isn't as advanced or in depth as something like Forza or Need for Speed, but it's enough to make me really happy that, oh, I can give my cars all of this like personal touch. That feels great.
It's kind of like having a character creator for your car.
A little bit, yeah. This is kind of like the Destiny 2 character creator of racing games. if we're gonna like choose, if we're gonna compare here, it's kind of like the Destiny 2. Like you can choose a face and you can choose, a little bit of your haircut and all that, but there's not a ton of options. It's kind of one of those.
You're not going to tweak where the tip of your nose is and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas Forza is very much like, do you want to do all kinds of banana stuff in this character creator? You want to like adjust your nose and make it gigantic? Go nuts. This is where you can do that. Project Cars is a lot more limited in that scope. You can choose designs for the cars, but it's not any sort of customization. And I'm not bothered by that. It's a different kind of game. It's very focused on being realistic and using real cars and real designs. Specific to Project Cars 2 as well. I'm a little bit annoyed at something though. And it's that it seems to assume that its entire player base is male.
Ugh.
Yeah. It did this in the original Project Cars as well.
Yeah.
There are like in-game news items and UI which use he/him pronouns, which are when referring to the player in the third person.
It's just
and
lazy.
so it generates headlines like Jessica wins his 4th race of the season, which is really weird.
Yeah.
It's weird to read and bad to read, specifically as like considering my experience as a trans person. It's this specific kind of bug, and it doesn't make me feel welcome playing the game. I still love it, and I've put a fuck ton of time into it so far, but it doesn't make me feel welcome playing the game.
That sort of oversight just makes it seem like they didn't even consider that someone playing the game might not be a guy, and that, like, what the hell are you doing?
I don't know.
Like, if it is a good assumption for them that, oh yeah, not many people who play our games aren't men, maybe it's because of stuff like this. Like, maybe it contributes to it.
And let's contrast this with other games in the same space. Let's look at Forza Motorsport. Let's look at Forza Horizon. Let's look at Dirt. All of these games have an option which allow you to choose to be a woman, either just by choosing female on your license, quote unquote.
Right. I mean, if you're choosing a name,
actually,
then obviously
choosing a name, but you have to actually choose. Like, you can choose a gender marker.
Yeah.
You can't choose a gender marker in Project Cars, but I can choose a name.
I mean, like, if it was a game where you are this person, like, and they are doing the campaign, you're following them, then it makes. I know that Need for Speed has done that a lot. Then it makes more sense because it's not you, it's this character. But when it is, okay, what's your name? Yes, it's lit. Oh, sorry, I'm not being very eloquent, but it's such an obvious oversight. I can't help but think of how BattleTech has done it in such a right way. How they literally just have a little pronoun selector.
It's really handy, that.
Yeah.
And
it seems so easy.
Contrasting it with Forza as well, like Forza has this staggering array of voice acted names and nicknames. So you're not even restricted to like having a regular name. You could, have a character who is called Jessica by the voice acting in that game, or you could have, in the same breath, you could have the game call you Master Chief or Mr. President or whatever.
So that reminds me of Fallout 4.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's except even more staggering even than Fallout 4.
I always have this weird, like, the joke names. They must seem really annoying if you know they're included, but they didn't include your name. I can understand why they're there still, and it's cool to include such a lot because the lists are really long, eh? Yeah.
Like, if I had to guess, I'd say for Forza, there's at least 200 or 300 options per, like, category, where it splits it into, like, male, female, and nicknames.
Pretty good.
And nicknames offer some like good neutral ones too, in addition to jokes like Master Chief. They can also just call you stuff like Sport if you wanted to. Like that's the sort of thing where you could actually there's some neutral ground where even if you don't have a name that's necessarily on the list, you can still feel welcome by the game.
Right,
either in silly ways or in just like very friendly ways.
Yeah.
I really like that approach to things.
Yeah.
I wish Project Cars 2 did that, but it doesn't. And that's a disappointment.
Hopefully, if there's a Project Cars 3, they get that right.
I mean, I'd just love to see a patch to Project Cars 2
That's
was like,
fair,
hey,
yeah.
please, make this happen. Fix this little thing. That'd be super great.
At the very least,
I know that it's potentially not a trivial effort to do as well. Like, there's potentially model swaps involved because there's the ability to play that game from a first-person perspective. So you might have to be able to look down and see on each of the individual models. You might have to see some form because racing gear is a little bit skin tight.
At the very least, if they're gonna pick a pronoun and apply it to everyone, pick a neutral one. Would have thought that would be pretty straightforward. There's probably a bunch of text that would need to be replaced if they do that, but
probably
be an improvement still.
I agree. On a related note to like Dirt 4 and Project Cars 2, though, I really like what their approach to community events is.
Yeah.
They have kind of a leaderboard of sorts, where Dirt has daily leaderboards basically, and Project Cars 2 has weeklies. And they are a time trial event that's set up with specific cars, tracks, setups sometimes even, so that everyone's on roughly equal terms. And they turn it into a pure skill leaderboard. And it's really easy to get into. It doesn't mean that you have to race online at all. It
just takes your time and then compares it with others.
Project Cars 2 is really approachable to do that with as well, because you can do as many laps in a session as you want, and it takes your best lap.
Oh, that is cool. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. I still also really like the potential system that Project Cars has.
Potential?
Yep. So each map is measured in 3 segments. And it takes the best times from each of those segments that you've done, and it combines them together, so you get like, oh, if you were to recreate your best run on all 3 sectors, then this is the time that you would get.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so even if you said if you had a lap where you did really well on the second section of the map, but you kind of whiffed it on the first and third, it would still update your potential.
And it records that separately to your actual best lap.
Yes, that's correct.
And it kind of, does that show you think that, oh, I've got room for improvement. If I try again, I might be able to get that speed?
Oh, totally. It absolutely shows that. It's really, really, really fascinating.
That sounds like a really cool feature.
Yeah, it's cool to see. It's cool to be able to visualize very easily, like, oh, hey, I have this much room for improvement. I've been doing this well, or, oh, my laps are a little bit inconsistent here. And this is what I can do when I'm really performing at my peak.
Yeah.
Another thing I like that the game does as well is for online, because I've been trying out some of the online in Project Cars 2. There's actually safety ratings.
How do you mean? Like what for?
So in racing games how like everybody gets off the grid and then like turn 1, everybody kind of crashes into each other.
I mean, that's what I do, yeah.
Yeah, this is designed to try and prevent that.
So
it's designed to reward safer drivers with a higher grade, so that if you wanted to say, I would like to race with people who are also safety minded and aren't going to screw up each other's runs, we're all going to be real careful going into turn 1. Then like you can do that. You can restrict it to say, oh, you have to have a C grade you have to have a C grade in safety at the very least to enter this event.
That's quite neat.
Yeah,
I wonder if people do the opposite to be like, I want to just have everyone hit each other all the time, and I want everyone to be into it.
and that's kind of the other side of what that system is designed for. I think you have reckless people who can get matched with other reckless people,
Hmm.
and you have the full-on safety-minded, like full simulation kind of people all getting
Yeah.
matched together as well. You have players with different intents.
Yeah, if you match that up, everyone has fun, it sounds like, which is good. You want people to have
Mm-hmm.
fun.
Now, Mark, a little earlier in the show, you mentioned that you bought a couple of new games, right?
Yeah, I bought two new games at once, which doesn't happen super often, and they're
I
both.
would say this is unprecedented, even.
I mean, there's bundles and stuff, so I've
Oh,
definitely
that's
bought
true.
two games at once before through that sort of thing. Although this was just two games that I liked the look of came out pretty much at the same time, and I guess I was in a buying mood. I don't know. They were pretty inexpensive. They were, I think, under $30 each, so it wasn't too bad. They're also both pixel art games where the protagonist is a woman with blue hair, which wasn't
Okay.
like something I planned to just buy those games today, but that's what happened. Um, but the games that I bought are Time Spinner and Crosscode. Um, I'd seen a little bit of Crosscode once a few years ago, and then proceeded to forget about it. And I sort of got reminded about it when it came out. And I'd just seen Time Spinner for the first time when Chucklefish, who are the publishers, whose games the games they've published are pretty consistently liked. They're all pixel art stuff, like
Hmm.
Starbound and Stardew Valley, and other games that don't start with the word star. Um, and I saw on their blog that they were teasing it as coming out really soon, so I picked it up, and I really enjoyed that game. Um, Honestly, I just wish it were a bit longer. It's not that it's short; it's just I really enjoyed playing it.
Hmm.
Um, I think I spent about 10 or 11 hours in it, and that was enough to not only finish the main story, but also like I found like the secret or alternate ending and beat a bunch of the secret bosses that I could find. I got I think most of the achievements, so I knew that a lot of the things that there's achievement for like finding all of the different weapons essentially, and I'd found them all, so I knew there wasn't any other um places to look to find those or bosses that I'd get another one when I beat them and stuff like that.
It seems like it's got a real like sense of brevity to it that is very rare in the current games client, I would say. Like it seems to know, just hearing you talk about this now,
Hmm.
like it seems to know when to have actually ended. It doesn't overstay its welcome.
It was definitely a complete story.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like if we see other games in the same universe, which I think will be cool, it won't probably be a continuation of the same one. Like it definitely wrapped itself up into a parcel, and I think it's better for that. I think that suits the game quite well. Um, it's also got a new game plus and a harder difficulty mode. So if I want to go back and play more, I could do that. Because I can't say I found it super challenging on the normal difficulty. It was still a lot of fun,
Yeah,
but I could try the harder one and see if um, especially now that I've played it and gotten used to it, see if that's a good way to get more out of it. Um, but yeah, the art is really really nice, as is often the case with pixel art games. But like this one is really nice, all animated very smoothly and everything. Um, and just had a few touches that I thought were really cool. It was it's very similar in structure to some Castlevania games.
hmm,
Um, where it's essentially a 2D action platformer, I suppose. Um, and the map is made up of a set of connected rooms, and you can see the map quite easily in traverse. I mean, there's a couple of areas. There's time travel involved, so you time travel between the two zones, which are like different versions of the same map at different times, essentially.
hmm.
Um, and the twist, I suppose, to the game is that your character can stop time for a limited duration, which then turns all the enemies into platforms, so you can use it to help with some platforming puzzles.
Hmm.
Um, Which was interesting. I saw this was kind of talked up quite a lot when the game was being teased as a big feature, but there's only a couple of times when the game forces you to do it, and there's relatively few times where there's secrets behind it, but some of those secrets were really hard to get to. The amount of time you can pause time for is quite short, even after you've like increased that bar quite a lot by finding secret chests. And there are some puzzles you can only solve unless I found out right after I solved them. You go to the secret zone at the end of the game. You get the special skill that basically lets you fly. But if you don't have that, pretty much the only way you can solve them is pause time, jump on an enemy, and then jump, and then unpause time, and hope the enemy flies up a bit, and then pause again and land on the enemy again, so you can climb that way. Because otherwise, you just can't get high enough. So right when I was near the end of the game, I spent a bunch of time, and I mean a bunch of time, trying to solve one of those puzzles, trying to like goad the enemy up while I'm standing on a moving platform, but it's not moving while time's paused. And I can, if I touch the enemy while it's time's not paused, or I get hit by its projectiles, I get knocked all the way down to the bottom of this tower. But if time's paused, it's fine, I can stand on it. And it took me like dozens of attempts, I think, to get it right. Best part was, I then died without saving after I got it right, so I had to do it again. Knowing it was possible, but having an even harder time of getting it perfectly right. I felt a real sense of accomplishment when I finally got it, but like half an hour later, I got the skill that would have let me do it without even having to try that puzzle. So that was something.
Yeah, I'm having a look at this game right now, and it reminds me of like Game Boy Advance era pixel art and UI design.
I think that the pixel art I'd definitely say is flashier than Game Boy Advance era, but I definitely know what you mean.
Certainly, yeah, but it seems like it got some of its influence from that era at the very least.
Yeah, I could definitely believe that. I know it's been talked about as resembling a particular Castlevania game, but I haven't played many of them, and I can't remember which one.
Yeah, it does. It seems like it has some Castlevania influences here. Like, I could probably guess Symphony of the Night.
This, that sounds familiar. That's probably the one people have talked about.
And I know can actually see a Metroid-style map in the upper right corner as well. Like, the influences of those games on this title seem to be, like, very, very clear. It seems to be worn on its sleeves.
Yeah, I was actually literally thinking of those words. So I after I played the game and was thinking about it a bit more, I did go and look up screenshots of the stuff that it seemed to be influenced by, and the style, the way the map is drawn, is pretty much identical. So it doesn't try to hide that at all. I don't think it needs to. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I liked the way there were a lot of different collectible weapons. It uses like magic spheres that work in different ways as your weapons. And there's a decent visual variety as well as just mechanical varieties. That was a lot of fun just to collect them all. Like I wanted to collect even the ones that I didn't actually feel like using. It was also really nice to see a game with a bestiary. Kind of nostalgic. I loved the old games that would let you just look through a list of all the things you'd fought. Especially like in a pixel art game where it's also kind of an art gallery of all these enemies.
I'm reminded a little bit there of I think probably my favorite game with a bestiary, which was, if I'm remembering this correctly, and I'm pretty sure I am, Bayonetta has one.
Yeah. And
with all of the like fantastic enemy design in Bayonetta, like it's just an absolute treat to go look at.
Yeah, bestiaries are so cool in games. They really are. It's also nice when you can just get like, I don't know, there's something about just having a one-line description of an enemy. There's something about maybe that wants to seek that out and read it. I don't know what drives that, but I just do. And it feels a bit more like you're collecting them when, after having fought one, it appears in a list you can look at as well. You know what I mean?
2016's Doom also has a really interesting one now that I think about it. Yeah, like there is actually like, there's a model viewer that'll unlock as you have finished the game. But there's also like in-game lore for all of the different types of enemies. It's kind of cool.
It is cool. Actually, come to think of it.
I think it unlocks more lore even as you kill more of the same type of enemy. It'll just like tell you more about their history.
Nice. Come to think of it, I think that remake of, well, the port of Chrono Trigger, I should say. It's not a remake. Has a bestiary added to it as well. That's the one I've got on DS, which I think is a port from when it was put on the PlayStation 1. But I'm pretty sure that's got a bestiary as well. I just haven't played that version in a little while. Another pixel art game. That's what I'm thinking. But another really nice thing about this game, it was really refreshing to see good queer representation in a game as well. And I hadn't known that going into it either. So it was a really, really nice surprise, actually. There's not a huge number of named characters that you talk to in the game. But among them, let me think. There's there's at least one mention of a polyamorous relationship. There's at least 2 characters that are bi. In the late game, if you've done all the players' quests, one of them comes out to you as trans. There's an ace character. And there's one character whose sexuality isn't explicit, but they're either gay or bi. So that's out of like 8 characters.
Shoot, yeah, that's some pretty like full-on queer representation then too. That's nice.
Yeah, and like I said, I hadn't known going into it that was going to be there, so it was really good to discover that way, I guess.
Yeah.
And so it was developed by one person. I saw that they've talked about a little in an Ask Me Anything thread on Reddit, which I went and had a look at, and said it was something that was important for them to have in. So yeah, that was just really, really refreshing. I also think this is. Do
you want me to read the quote?
Oh yeah. Have you got it up? Go for it.
Yeah, I do actually have this up. So the quote from Lunar Ray Games, which is the developer of Time Spinners, about the queer representation in Time Spinner, says that representation is deeply important to me. Being gay, I don't often see characters in game reflecting me. With Time Spinner, I had the unique chance to show what life is like for me. The majority of my friends are queer. Even the majority of the people who worked on the game are too. To me, it's simply normal, and I wanted to capture that feeling of this is how it is for me. Also, anyone who says that all the characters are gay is being forgetful of the 3 men and woman relationships in the game.
Yeah. That's it.
That's it.
We need more of it.
I really like that idea of, showing your subjective experience, like your subjective worldview as like, oh, you are a queer person. Chances are you have surrounded yourself with other queer people. And so the density of queer people in your life experience is very high. Like, as someone who's queer myself, like, obviously all of my partners are queer. Like, a majority of my friends are queer in some way, shape, or form. And so, like, the number of friends I have who don't identify as cis, who don't identify as straight, like, the amount of friends I have in that circle is so much higher than the amount of friends that I have that do.
Yeah.
If I were to make a game, then it would probably reflect that same worldview, and it also contributes to the idea of like representing all of these characters as well. It's really good.
Yeah. I'd recommend this game, honestly. Even if it weren't for that was just a really, really nice cherry on top. I just enjoyed Time Spinner really thoroughly. So I hope that they're going to make more games.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
I really do.
I haven't played as much Crosscode, which is the other game with a blue-haired woman as the main character that I bought.
Yep.
I remember I first saw like a little video of it a couple of years ago or something when it was in development, and I remember seeing, oh, this is made in HTML5. That's really cool because I'm a front-end web developer. HTML5 is what I work in every day. So seeing a game that looked neat that was built in that was, I don't know, encouraging? I don't know. I just thought it was really cool. I probably played the first hour or 2 of it. I've noticed that it's very smooth. Like, the animations are really smooth. Like, the speed you move around and stuff just feels good. I like the art. Some of the environmental art I've seen seems really quite... reminiscent of or influenced by Seiken Densetsu 3, which is a Super Nintendo game in the Secret of Mana franchise that has probably the most beautiful pixel art I've ever seen in a game or anywhere. So it's cool to see that influence. It like they have barriers between water and ground that remind me really heavily of how it's done in that game. So I'm pretty confident that they were using that as an influence. The game itself is like the premise of it is very meta, where you are playing someone who is playing in an MMO.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those magic MMOs where it's actually real life and you're controlling a robot on some other planet.
Right.
But just the idea of playing a video game of someone playing a video game is something in this game. I haven't yet seen really anything outside of that. I don't know if there is much outside of that, but it's been interesting. I've talked before about how MMOs don't really click with me, so I tend to avoid them. So it's kind of interesting to see now a game where NPCs are made to look like other actual people who are playing an MMO.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the NPCs that are made to look like NPCs in an MMO.
Yeah.
There's like these two groups of non-player characters in this game. One who are meant to be very clearly non-player characters, and others who are meant to be like, well, they're meant to be player characters, but in this game they're not. Because yeah, it's weird. I still haven't fully gotten my head around how I find that. So the first character I've interacted with who's meant to be a player has actually been quite a lot of fun to interact with. Feels kind of like a person, which I think is a sign of good writing so far. I've only been around them for about 20 minutes, but
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to playing more of that one when I get the chance.
Speaking of things that I'm looking forward to playing more of.
Yeah.
Remember, I think the last episode we had, I talked about Yakuza Kiwami because I had just started that around that time.
Mm-hmm.
And last time I talked about it, I myself was very early in that game, and I had some criticisms of it and how it was handling the narrative, having come off of just Yakuza 0 pretty freshly.
Yeah, I think you said that it can't settle on a tone at the start or something, right?
Yeah, that was exactly what I said. In fact, it felt like it was disjointed because it was jumping very, very quickly between serious and trying to be comedic.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some concerns about that. Like, was that going to continue throughout the rest of the game?
Yeah.
I'm pleased to report that as I continue to play that and want to play more of it, that is not the case. I haven't found that it's felt wildly out of balance anymore. It's gotten into a groove where it once again knows when it's time to be funny, and it knows when it's time to be serious. It's treading that line again, much in the same way that Yakuza 0 did,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something I really have a fuck ton of appreciation for. It's such excellent writing.
Nice.
It's not shying away from any of that like wildness that was in Yakuza 0 and
Mm-hmm.
the scale, the grandeur, and the comedy, but all of those main threads that I was really thinking, oh, is this gonna try and toe the line as well? I don't know if it's gonna work. It doesn't end up doing that. It's got a much better grasp on its own tone and its internal like drama. The more modern time period of it as well, like Yakuza 0 was set in the 80s. So for example, you had a pager as one of your mechanics. Yeah, you could get paged by various people over the course of the game, and these would have various messages and meanings.
I wonder how obviously dated some games like the Grand Theft Auto games with their phone interface will seem. I wonder if they considered that when they were making them, that they really wanted to tie them to a certain period with that kind of interface. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and Yakuza Kiwami does that a little bit as well. You have like a flip phone interface.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, like it's very tied to that early 2000s time period.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also some other things that it can kind of play around with in that same sense. The space that you're in, Kamurocho, it feels a lot more modern in Yakuza Kiwami. It's really fascinating to see that transformation and to see the various like technological advances and that contribute to some of the machinations of the story as well. It's really cool. You can see a progression of time in that same space, and starting to see some familiar faces from Yakuza 0 popping up. There's like a handful of kids that you could meet in Yakuza 0 at the pocket circuit races, which was the slot cars.
And they're not kids anymore?
They're not kids anymore. You meet them 20 years later when Kiwami is set, and like they're fully grown adults. And you can meet them again for the first time, and they like recognize you, and they're like, "Oh my god, it's been so long! I haven't seen you around Pocket Circuit," and like, I've gone off and done my own thing. It's this really, really great progression. It feels great. Yakuza Kiwami is really, really good.
Nice.
That series is super good. Highly recommend it. Speaking of series that are good, and you're playing a game that I previously had played at one point and talked about a little bit on the series.
Yeah, so I've talked recently about how I'd been playing Assassin's Creed Black Flag and hadn't really gotten into it because it felt a bit like work. And I think I finally got up to the bit where it was going to be fun, but it already felt like too much work, so I gave it back to my brother, who I'd been borrowing it from. And instead now I'm borrowing Assassin's Creed Origins from him, so I guess I'm one behind in the franchise now. I'm catching up, I don't know. But I've been playing that the last week or so, and it's so much easier to get into than Black Flag. I don't feel like I'm doing homework when I play it. You can just get straight to the fun stuff, which is way nicer. And I'd noticed this when I'd watched him playing after again, and I think I even mentioned it on the show, but there are some surprising touches in this game that are just really... it doesn't point them out to you, but they're really convenient and nice when they're there. So one that I noticed early on, which I didn't know about, is if you're holding a torch, which the game tells you how to do quite early on if you're in a dark area, and you stand near like a brazier or an unlit torch that's attached to a wall, Bayek, your character, just lights it with his torch if you're standing there. I sort of wondered if it would work and tried it, and it did. And there's been a lot of stuff in this game where I've sort of wondered if it would work and tried it, and then it did. Another example is there are cats in this game, which gets big 2 thumbs up. And if you crouch near a cat, you pet the cat, which is amazing. It's so good. Especially since I was really annoyed that you couldn't do anything with the cats in Black Flag, if I remember correctly. I think you could pet dogs, but not cats, or some stupid bullshit. But yeah, there are cats. You can pet the cats. It is good. Makes this a good game. I also found out before the game told me, which it did later on, that if you're on your mount, you can just hold X for a moment and it starts following the road, and then it prompts you to press triangle to just go towards your objective, and then you can put the controller down, or you can tap the up arrow and you can go into your eagle-shaped UAV while your character keeps going, and hope you keep up, because it looks like actually if you get just barely away from him when you leave, it goes into a loading screen. There's a lot of loading in this game. It's kind of jarring. Especially if you're doing quests. It feels really weird for an open world game, but the loading screens happen a lot. And sometimes I feel like I'm spending as much time loading as I'm watching cutscenes.
I can't say that I had the same experience. I think the only time that I saw loading screens once I'd finished loading into the game was entering an actual story event where there was a cinematic that was being played, or if I let Senu fly away too far.
I should clarify as well. I'm not talking about like the big loading screens where you're like in the weird demi-plane.
Oh no, that I know.
Yeah, okay.
Even still, I very rarely saw loading screens myself.
I've had instances where there's a loading screen for a cutscene, and then the cutscene ends, so there's a loading screen, and then I'm back again, and then I walk 10 meters, and then there's a loading screen because he's about to talk to someone in a cutscene.
Mm.
And when that happens, it's just not the best. Thankfully, if you're just out exploring or fighting, then so long as you don't send your eagle more than like 15 meters away from you, there won't be a loading screen.
Just a little bit more tolerance than that, but I
Honestly, it
think it's
feels
good.
like it's barely anymore. I've been
That's fair.
surprised at how close you have to stay before it goes into a loading screen when you leave. Like I've gone into Sinew the Eel and then like tagged some enemies and then gone back and there's a loading screen and the enemies are gone now.
Yeah, the console versions of this game can be a little bit wonky because all of that, like all of the texture and land data, has to actually be streamed back and forth between
Mm,
those two perspectives,
yeah,
basically. So if you get too far away from Senu, you've got a whole other set of land that's loaded in,
exactly. So I've
and
I've
so you have to
been
go back and reload all of the land.
I've been trying to learn what the edge of that tolerance is so I don't get the loading screens, but it's kind of annoying to have to play that way, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not a huge blight on the game. It's just something I noticed. Um, One thing that is, I guess, an improvement is the biggest animation jankiness Assassin's Creed has had is it's always had quite heavily counter-based combat, and the counterattack animations would be like your character's doing an animation, the enemy is doing an animation, and they're supposed to be like perfectly in sync. So you stab in them and the sword stays in the wound. Except that
Hmm.
has never once happened. You stab them and the sword jumps around to various areas of their chest because you are not tied together at all. And it's always looked horrible to me, but Assassin's Creed Origins doesn't have any counterattacks at all, it seems. So there are very few of those animations that are meant to be tied together, so it's less obvious that that's bad now. Um, I honestly kind of miss the counterattacks though. I'm not a huge fan of Origin's different style of combat. I'm particularly not a huge fan when all the enemies are on horses, which in some locations is all the time. And I was worried for a while that it was going to be all the time like that, but once you leave the first big city, it's much less of a problem, thankfully.
Hmm.
Um, Leveling, of course, is also the other main difference in this game. And I know that Odyssey, that just came out, has stuck with a lot of these big differences.
Yeah, the idea behind it, I believe, is to, transition Assassin's Creed into a full blown RPG, is
Mm,
their vision.
yeah,
Which has worked to varying degrees, but also comes with some annoyances, particularly around the leveling, and how the progression can feel a little bit slow if you're not doing enough of the side content.
yeah.
And that some people have theorized is intended to lead people towards microtransactions to, get level boosters and get exp boosts and
Does
all
that stuff
that.
exist? I haven't seen any of that.
Yes, so that stuff does exist. It's also in Origins to a lesser degree, but Odyssey definitely has more of
Well,
that.
actually, to be fair, I like intentionally avoid looking at anything that looks like it might involve microtransactions in the menu. So that's probably why I
Yeah,
haven't seen it.
I tend not to look at that stuff as well, but it is there,
Yeah,
and it's not ideal to say the least. For what it's worth, I have also seen an alternative take on that Ubisoft basically makes their microtransactions so expensive that basically no one can afford to purchase them anyway. But nonetheless, it's still a concerning aspect of that design.
fuck microtransactions. Anyway, um, I struggled to find anything that leveling adds in Origins. To be honest, I
I think
don't really like it.
I think the idea is just to add the like,
I mean, you've got ability
I guess a
points
more
now in a skill
consistent.
tree.
Yeah,
What's with
and
that?
I guess the idea behind that is just to have a more consistent progression. Just like, oh yeah, I've reached this new level and now I have this new ability or power or benefit.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
And
it
it
feels
just
really weird to be like, well, I'm level 4, so if there's a level 7 enemy, they're going to be really hard. But then later on, well, I'm level 21, so I'll kill him just if I touch him with my pinky finger. And it
hmm.
just feels weird. I don't know.
For my part, what I did when I was playing this game was there is actually an option,
Oh, I
which
have seen
is,
it. It brings the lower level enemies up to your level.
yes, that's
Yeah,
correct.
I have seen that, and I've thought if I go back to low level areas, I'll probably turn it on. But still, it just feels weird to have these. Well, this is in this city, all the guards are super elite, untouchable. But actually, over here in this other major city, they're all super weak. And it's like, I get it. They want you to progress through the world in a certain order and stop you getting ahead of yourself. But it feels weird to me, I guess. I've also noticed that the experience you get from killing guards is like 1%, literally, or less, what you get from finishing any side quest. So it's
Oh yeah, no,
definitely meant
like,
to be that your progression is entirely based on the quests you do.
and there's some cool quests in there. To
Oh
be
no,
fair, like,
definitely.
but I think Ash and other people as well have argued like, oh, the quests are a little bit filler. Like they don't often provide a lot of substantial content. There's some good stuff buried in there, but the ratio is low enough that it's kind of a drag to actually level.
Thankfully, not having it tied to combat means leveling doesn't feel grindy, even if it can feel like you have
Yeah,
to go through a lot of content. So that is a nice aspect of that, I
I
guess.
agree with that as well.
Um, but it does feel like you can do. There's like a right amount of side content to do, which is weird. It's like if you do all of it, you're over leveled. If you don't do any of it, you're under leveled. So should I do most of it, but I shouldn't do all of it? It feels a little strange.
I tended to do just stuff that interested me.
Yeah.
If I found some like narrative thread in some of the side stuff that I was interested in pursuing, if I saw something that was like, oh, what is this? When I was looking at the map and I saw, oh, there's this quest over here and it's got an interesting name that caught my eye. I want to go check that out.
Yeah, so the quests I've found kind of tend to come in groups often, where it's like the quests around this area. So generally, I'll like try to do all the quests in an area because they tend to culminate in the quests you get after you've done all of them. But there are some areas I've just been like, well, no, this doesn't interest me. I won't follow this quest line. There's some that seem to be about racing horses, but the main NPC that pulls you into that quest line, I just don't like and don't want to have to interact with more. So I just left the area, which I could do, so that's fine. Um, it's one thing that the side quests I think are kind of nice, or a nice thing about them is it feels like the people in each area aren't just NPCs that get generated every time you enter the area. It feels like, oh no, I recognize this person. I see them around in this place all the time. It's this person. That's them, which is really nice. And then some of them happen to have quests, and I've found this really annoying thing where the illusion is broken. So I entered a new city, and I heard a snippet of conversation where two people talk to each other and they refer to each other by name. And I was like, oh, cool, that's this person and this is that person. And then before that conversation had ended, another couple of people started having the same conversation. And then while the first two conversations were still happening, a third pair of people started having the same conversation. So they were all three going at once, like an echo,
Ugh.
referring to each other by name again. So it really, really broke the illusion. And that was the worst instance of this, but there have been a bunch of times where I just hear the same conversation multiple times right after one another, which feels, I don't want to say lazy, but like, feels like surely they should have figured out that shouldn't happen and put something in to stop it. Like, it feels like such an obvious thing to not have happen that it's kind of disappointing to have it happen. But yeah, all in all, I have enjoyed the game. There have been some things I noticed that just made me groan a little bit, basically. But I'm sure I'll play more of it. I've definitely enjoyed it a lot more than Black Flag. It's been so much easier to get into and do stuff.
Mm. Yeah, I'm glad that the accessibility of the story and mechanics and stuff in Assassin's Creed Origins is so much higher than it fucking used to be in the series. Like, Black Flag is criminal for how much time you've to spend without a ship. And
Oh,
I get that
and then when
it's
they
kind of like the reward for spending, 6 or so hours getting through the story, and I get it's the carrot on a stick that's supposed to drag you through the opening bits there, but wow, it was miserable to play through that when I was just like, oh, I want to, stream this and, have fun driving this ship around.
Especially like
And then
it's the aftermath of Assassin's Creed 3 where you've already done some ship stuff and you want to get back to it. And then they're like, "Oh, you're in a make-believe video game studio. Listen to this conversation and you better be excited about that fake tablet we gave you." It's like, "No, come on." I'm glad that the Animus stuff in Origins has been pretty minimal, and you can just say most of the time, "Oh no, I want to get back into the Animus as soon as possible."
Yeah.
So it's more avoidable and also just less bad.
I'm in. All right. Well, speaking of Ubisoft games, I've been playing a Ubisoft game myself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Would have been like probably almost a year and a bit ago. I would have talked about my experience with the Ghost Recon Wildlands beta.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So I started playing it for real. I got it a while back while it was really, really cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I've started kind of playing it for real, and I think I found an interesting way for me to actually, like frame this for myself so that I can, one, tolerate playing it, and two, actually see what the game has to say, if anything. And that's to frame my character as the villain.
Ah, that makes sense because I remember they seemed like they were evil.
With the character creation in mind, like I created a very like video game villain as my character, and I'm going to play it that way.
Okay, tell me about them. How did you make them villainous?
Big old scar.
Oh
you
yeah,
know, you gotta have a big old scar.
but the video
rolled
game
with
heroes can have scars too if they're grizzled heroes.
This is true. I chose to play as a woman. She's got relatively short blonde hair, green eyes, big old scar.
Woman with a scar
Knife
is almost
strapped to
always
her
a villain.
chest. Yeah, it's true though. Like men can have scars if they're video game men can have scars and they're like still good. But if you give a woman a scar, they are absolutely definitely the villain.
Or they're like the badass who upstages you, but you don't get to hang out with them very much.
Yeah, there's one of two possibilities, and it's usually the villain. Um, so I've just kind of kitted her out like that, and I intend to play this as the villain and see what this game has to say, if anything. It's one of those things that I'm not going to be like streaming any of or anything because I'm not into the idea of exposing other people to the politics of this game
Yeah,
on their own volition, nor am I going to condone playing it. It's one of those things as well. Like I at the top of the episode, I talked about Capcom and Telltale closures, and it being the month of October, I kind of had this like itch earlier in the month. I was like, oh, you know what I should do? I should like play Resident Evil 7 and I should stream that with
Halloween.
the Capcom thing. Yeah. But with the Capcom closure, now I'm like, oh, I'm going to play this game probably in private. Like it's too late. I've spent my money on it.
Right.
But I'm not going to stream it or anything because that would be seen as a tacit endorsement of this game. And I don't want anybody to think that they should play or purchase Capcom games after their studio closure. Which, frankly, I might need to do some reevaluating on that based on the position, the actual situation around the studio closure. Despite it being sudden, there's some other circumstances like the employees actually getting severance, for example, that make it so maybe I need to consider that a little bit differently. Where like Telltale, I could straight tell you, oh, Telltale fucked 200 of their employees and didn't give them any severance. Don't play any of their fucking games. Don't give them any more money. Um, yeah, it's gonna Ghost Recon's definitely gonna be one of the games that I also just continue to play in private and tell people, hey, I don't necessarily recommend that you play this game. I don't necessarily think that this game is good. I don't think it has necessarily good things to say. And but I'm going to play it so that I can understand what, if anything, it's going to say.
Okay. How have you
So
been finding that, playing it in that mindset?
Interesting. I'm not going to say a ton more because I want to actually play it a little bit more and collect some more notes.
Okay, fair enough.
On the game's internal politics and how it's all working out. But it's interesting so far, and I think you'll hear more about it in the days and weeks to come.
Cool.
All right, with that, shall we wrap up?
Sure thing. What are you looking forward to playing this coming week?
This coming week, I'm looking forward to playing some Destiny 2. I'm going to continue to play Gambit. Overwatch has got its Halloween event on now, so I might actually jump back into that for a little while and check it out. Yakuza Kiwami, which I mentioned earlier. And I think... Oh, and Project Cars 2. I think I'm just going to continue to try and get better at that game.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. How about you?
I feel like I'll probably play some more Origins and I'll get back into Crosscode at some point. But you know what month it is.
Month of October.
And also, to celebrate my yearly XCOM binge, a new DLC has come out for XCOM 2, which almost came out of the blue, honestly. And it's free until December if you own the expansion they already have. So it's a bunch, as I understand it, it's a bunch of story missions bridging the gap between XCOM 1 and 2. I haven't played it yet. I'm going to after this recording. That is definitely something I'm going to be playing this week.
Yeah.
Possibly the main thing.
I actually just had a look at the front page of Steam really quickly as well, and it looks like there's a new scenario for Frostpunk that's just released.
Yeah, I knew about that as well. It sounds very challenging. So
I wasn't sure if that would be interesting.
I think it's free. So I think I have it. I don't know if I'll try that or not. I've read about it, and basically it's the fall of Winterhome. So in the first scenario, you find out partway through that this other settlement, Winterhome, which you thought was around, actually failed ages ago. And it chucks you in partway through its decline, and it's basically, you haven't had a chance to plan this city, but it's falling apart, and now you have to stop it from falling apart. So, yeah, I don't know if that is quite for me. We'll see if I get to that, but I don't think it seems likely. Like, it seems cool. I'm sure people who are into Frostpunk will be into it, but I don't think I quite play it for the reasons that their main audience plays it for.
Neat. All right. Well, I think that about does it for this episode of PauseCast. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard and want to support the show, we have a few ways you can do that. The first, and this helps us out a whole lot, is you can rate or review the show on your platform of choice. Every review or rating helps us out a lot. So please, 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 please definitely consider doing it. We also have ways that you can financially support the show if you're interested. You can support us one-off with a just one-time donation by going to bit.ly/pausecoffee, and that will allow you to give us a coffee or two or three, up to you. You can also support us month to month via our Patreon. Thank you so much to all of our current patrons. Just pulling the list. Mary, Moth, Para, Sammy, Dove, Ash, and Corey Bat. Thank you so much for your continued support of the show. It really means a lot. Thank you as well to Leon for the use of our theme song, Honey Milk Island. You can find Leon's music and download some of it for free at soundcloud.com/LEYAWN. Mark, where can people find you online?
Hold on. Sorry, you spelled the word yawn and I couldn't not.
Yep, sorry. Mark, where can people find you online?
I'm on Twitter at HonestUniverse, and I write a blog as well, though not about video games, at honestuniverse.com. How about you?
You can find me online at bird.school, and you can find me streaming online at maximumgun.org. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of PauseCast. Again, we really, really appreciate it. And until next week, see you next time.
Bye.